Okay, so it's gonna be a short one today because I don't really have the time to go in depth. Also, I didn't read anything that really requires me to go in depth, just for posterity. Right now it is July. No. Right now it is August 1st. July is over, so I am going to be covering what I read during July. Also, important life update. During July, I went and started on my tattoo sleeve. Miéville. I guess like I can't really show you like 360 degrees what it looks like. I can try. So it's been 3 sessions so far. The first one, I had the fish put in. 1, 2, 3. And then for the second session, I had the flower and the waves outline, and then I can't really, can you see it? Okay, yeah. And then for the third session, I did some shading, especially for this area. This one was the second session, yeah, along with the flower. Let's just say that it hurts a lot afterwards for the shading. Like, line work during hurts, but afterwards it's fine. Whereas for shading, it doesn't hurt, as in, how to say, it hurts less. It's like a punch and then it just mellows out a little bit. Whereas for like line work, it's like, you know, but shading is like, and then the next time again. So it's not so bad during, but the healing process, it's just the absolute worst. The absolute worst. Yeah, all this was bloody yesterday. I had to slap on some very expensive gel that my mother gave to me out of the pity of her heart. She saw that I was suffering too badly and she was like, no, you need to put this on. So okay, I did. I put it on. Alright, so that's just a very short life update about July. Other than that, nothing much. Nothing much. I was just busy either getting a tattoo or healing from the tattoo, or trying very hard not to scratch the tattoo. I think like one of the worst things about this entire process is that I have become intimately familiar with the smell of my own blood. Like, you don't really realize how blood has a smell. Of course, if like you're a person who gets periods, then you are familiar with, you know, the smell of blood, but the blood is different. How to say, like, you know when you read in books and then every time there is a kind of a scene of carnage, and then the protagonist is always like, the smell of carnage and of blood and war. You don't really know what that means, right? But then when I was confronted like this close to my own face with the smell of like an open wound, there is a smell, and it is not a good smell. So it's very strange to think that like something as important to our existence as blood has a bad smell. I mean, maybe it's bad to me. Then again, I don't really eat red meat. I don't eat red meat. Like, I simply don't. So to me, like when people want to eat their steak like close to like rare, I don't get it. I just don't get it. The smell just, it's not even a metallic smell. Like a metallic smell, period blood has a metallic smell, but like wound smell, it's not metallic. It's just, it smells bad. It smells like, it makes me nervous. Maybe it's like a evolutionary kind of thing, you know, you smell blood and you're like, danger, 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 you must run away. Anyway, this month I have reached new levels of tiredness. I'm so tired, I don't even get to read anymore. So this month I only read 7 books. Okay, so instead of going chronologically, I think I would just go according to like type. Yeah, I tried to read a good balance of books this month. I read 3 East Asian novels, I read 3 Western novels, and then I read 1 singlit collection. So starting with the East Asian, On Such a Full Sea by Chang-rae. So this is actually speculative fiction. It's set in the future when the world has already encountered some kind of apocalypse and now we are living in the fallout of it. So long story short, it was quite heartbreaking to read. So the premise is very simple. Like, there is a girl and she had a boyfriend. The boyfriend supposedly has a special genetic makeup that makes him immune to diseases that are called C diseases. They basically took him in to experiment on his genes because apparently C disease is something that afflicts many people, especially after the apocalyptic event. So she goes out of a tiny fish rearing village to look for her boyfriend because she's pregnant, and along the way she encounters different people, she gets in danger, people want to exploit her. It's very strange. Like, this book reads a lot like a cross between Hot House and Lanark, in the sense that as she travels from area to area, she gets to meet different life, more of like people who live a different life from her, and she is being tested and also transformed along the way, hence Lanark, which is kind of a reference to the Water Babies, the classic text. So that's this book number 1. Second one I read is The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. So Yoko Ogawa, I have a lot of her books on my shelf because I think that she writes very good spooky short stories. So this is a longer text of hers. It's long in the sense that it's not a short story, but it was still quite enjoyable. So it's set on a mysterious island where there exists this kind of like malevolent governmental authority called the Memory Police. And the Memory Police, when they decide that something doesn't exist anymore, they disappear it, and then it disappears from everybody's collective memories. So like, let's say batteries don't exist anymore, poof, and then if you have a battery, you're looking at it, you'll be like, oh, this doesn't exist, I have to throw it in the river, I have to burn it up. And then after you do that, it will just poof from your memories as well. So it's kind of interesting, and I feel that it's definitely social critique. This is quite popular these days. I'm sure you've already seen many other reviews about it. If you are familiar with the style of translated Japanese text, then yeah, go ahead. But I think like this kind of translated writing is not for everybody, because everybody has different like threshold. They might feel a bit impatient reading something like this, or they might not be familiar with the unconventional plot structure. They were like, it's going nowhere, nothing is happening, or maybe you just don't get it, you know? That's just my opinion. Okay, third, Shield of Straw by Kazuhiro Kiuchi. So this one is also another depressing. Oh, they're all depressing. what have I been doing? Okay, yeah, this is another depressing book. This is about, once again, testing the boundaries of morality. So there is a police officer who kind of prides himself on always following everything by the book. However, one day there is like a serial child rapist and murderer who honestly commits the most atrocious crimes ever, and the grandfather of one of the victims is actually this super rich guy, and he puts a bounty. He like hires entire PR firms to create a website, to have an FAQ, to like put out expensive full-page newspaper ads saying that he will pay like a huge, atrocious amount of money on anybody who can kill the guy. So the murderer turns himself in. Obviously he realizes that nowhere is safe anymore, but everywhere he goes, people are trying to kill him for the money, obviously, and also because he deserves it, in my personal opinion. Like, his nurse tries to kill him, different policemen also try to kill him. After he turns himself in, you can't even trust like anyone anymore. So our protagonist becomes the last person who is willing to defend this horrible man, who honestly has no redemption arc whatsoever. All the way to the end, he's horrible. He's just downright horrible. Our protagonist, he obviously goes through some kind of moral dilemma, because on one hand, he's like, I must do my job as a policeman, my job is to protect this person. It doesn't matter if he is a criminal who deserves death. Who am I to decide that? But at the end, that reasoning is questioned when the criminal is shown to be incorrigible. Okay, I won't spoil it for you, but it's just depressing. There's no happy ending. Okay, so now moving on to Western books. Okay, this is a bit depressing also. This is a novella called This Census-Taker by miéville. So I don't know whether you all know his books, but he writes... Okay, I have a few of his books over there lah. But he writes books like Perdido Street Station, very famous. The City and the City, Rail Sea, yeah, etc, etc. So he has an entire series of books, but this is a novella. But for a novella, it is a book length, so take it as you will. And this book, it's about a family, father, mother, and a son. The father is a foreigner. He has magic powers. They live on a hill. The hill is like very big, not like, you know, Singapore Bukit Timah Hill or what, but it's like a big hill. It's not a mountain, but it's hilly enough for there to be like a significant amount of distance between our protagonist's family and the town that lives at the bottom of the hill. So our protagonist, he one day witnesses his father killing his mother. He runs down, all the way down to town, to tell everybody that what he saw was the truth. But then his father comes down and wants to take him home and wants to continue living a normal life, but the son believes that he saw what he saw, and the father is just like, oh no, he saw us having a normal couple's quarrel, and his mother actually wanted to leave already. The mother, like, you know, that's why we had a fight about it, but anyway she's left already and I will continue being a single father. So no one believes the little boy except for some of his friends, because they really believe that like this boy is just imagining things, you know, he's totally being gaslit. The father almost gets away with it until one day a census-taker, hence census-taker, who is meant to like go and count the population after some kind of war, and he thoroughly investigates the mother's disappearance. He crawls into the hole and everything, and then at the end of it, he kind of like adopts the little boy. He takes him under his wing as kind of his apprentice. So it's the whole book is just very tense. Like, you don't get to see the scenes of horror and killing, but they are always just there, like behind you and just creeping up on you, and you get a sense that it really is there. So it was quite an interesting read, but once again, not for everybody. Another Western text I read, The Thief Lord by Cornelia Funk. This was recommended to me by a student. So apparently it's like a super famous children's story, and Cornelia Funk, most people would know her by her Ink Heart series, which is good. I might reread it someday. It's just good old-fashioned fantasy, like, you know, it's just pure escapism. So this is one of those children's stories where there is like a gang of thieves, and they are recently joined by an orphaned pair of brothers whose aunt only wants to adopt the younger one but not the older one. So they fall into that kind of like street life in Venice, and a detective is hired to hunt them down. But at the end of the day, the detective kind of becomes their friend, and then they solve like this big mystery of like a magical carousel that allows you to either grow old or grow very young. That's all I will say. It's just a good respite from everyday. The 6th book that I read, which is also Western literature, I read it on Libby, so I'll just put the cover here. So this is Mr. Monday by Garth. So this is book 1 of his Keys to the Kingdom series. I've been wanting to read it for a while now, so I'm glad that it's on Libby and I don't have to go and hunt down a physical copy, even though the later books there is a queue, because there are only like 2 copies available. For ebook, you know, I don't really understand how that works. Like, if it's an ebook, shouldn't it be an unlimited number of copies? Why are there only 2, or in some cases only 1, and then you have people queuing for it? So in book 1, there exists a magical dimension called the house. Where we live in is the lower dimensions. Like, we are just a manifestation of some kind of goddess that decided to create us out of nothing. And this house is run by, wow, it's so hard to explain a fantasy world. Okay, this house at the moment, it's run by 7 people who are named after the days of the week, obviously, right? And one of them, he tries to like circumvent some kind of will by passing on one of his keys to a mortal who is about to die, in the hopes that he will die and then he can take back the key and then he can keep the key forever. I know this doesn't make sense. I know, like I'm hearing myself right now, it doesn't make sense. So you just have to go and read it on your own. But okay, what I do know is that the protagonist is very likable. So his name is Arthur, and he is asthmatic, he is very weak, and he's like basically on the brink of death. You can't breathe, that's it, right? But then after he gained like the key, he's been stronger, and he also always does the right thing. Yeah, so this is obviously children's literature, and what I also like about it is that there is no like unnecessary love triangle in it. I think there will be, like in the future, when he grows up a little bit, because he's given so much power on a plate. He has an entire realm foisted upon him that he can be king and master of, but he says he doesn't want it. He just wants to go back and live a normal life. He wants to come back only after he's done growing up. I think that's very mature and very sensible, and as a message to his young readers, I think Garth is also kind of trying to say like, you shouldn't be so quick to prioritize fantasy worlds over your own existence, no matter how miserable, because I mean, he is asthmatic. So I would see this book as a kind of like isekai kind of genre, in that you have a protagonist who is kind of weak, no friends, not popular at all, and then one day he's dropped into a magical world where he can be king and master, and then he kind of has a girlfriend, but he doesn't want that. He's not willing to give up his family and his parents and his siblings and his schooling. So I think it's very admirable. I think it's a good message. I think it's a good book. So I am going to be reading the rest of the series. Hopefully it gets more exciting. I'm very interested in seeing him grow up into like an older teenager. I think that would be interesting. Okay, so the last book is Singapore literature, News at 9 by David Leo. So this book, right, was not available on Goodreads. Like, I tried to look for it and I couldn't find it, and it's not available on Libby either. So I guess maybe it's because it's kind of old. It was written in 2003, so that is 17 years ago. Okay, doesn't feel that long ago. I was P3. Yeah, I was P3. It's a collection of short stories. I'm gonna show you the contents page. This is the contents page. All the stories are a bit out of the ordinary. They are not stories about normal Singaporeans living normal Singaporean lives. In a way they are, but something weird happens to them. There is something always along the margins, something that comes in and disrupts. So I feel like this is a very common theme, this idea that there is always something just on the peripheries of our conscious that is threatening to destabilize the life that we have now. And I think like maybe in 2003 the climate was also like that. So it's a book that is very apt for its time. Out of the short stories here, I quite liked maybe a good half of them. Yeah, I really liked half of them. My favorite one is still like Soup of the Day, of course, because I mean, who doesn't think about abusive husbands being turned into bak kut teh and served to his friends? But for Singlit, right, looking at it now, I realized that like Singlit last time was a bit more free. Like nowadays, if we want to use certain stories, we wouldn't be allowed to, because they would contain like banned themes. Like, I don't know, teenagers having sex or getting pregnant or like masturbation or that kind of thing. But if you don't want to have some kind of realistic portrayal in your book, they can very easily find it in text not from Singapore. So the whole idea of like trying to promote Singapore literature, you have to take it in its entirety, right? The good and the bad and the ugly. You cannot only want books that are very like politically correct, like with talking about family values and talking about, oh, we must care for our elderly, we must fight for our nation, etc, etc. It's like nobody is going to read law, you know. And then you're going to be like, oh, why is it that locals don't want to consume local literature anymore? I wonder why, huh? I'm not saying that, like, you know, we need to create like very dirty, sordid stories just to draw a particular readership. But if you whitewash everything too much, you don't even allow unsavoriness in your text, then the impression that you are giving to young readers is that Singapore literature is all going to be very boring, and you're already not allowing them to have any kind of like curiosity or develop any kind of like interest in other possible works of literature that might give them some kind of insight. So I don't know, I just feel like this is not the way to go lah. You know, family friendly is really not the way to go. Okay, so those are the 7 books that I read. It's a very nice weather today, but we still cannot dine out. It's still like 2.5 weeks more before we might be allowed to eat outside again. This is really not how I envisioned the second half of 2021 going, but you know what, it is what it is. This coming August, I am really going to be swamped with a lot of marking. So reading wise, most of the time I only get to read when I'm sitting there getting tattooed. Yeah, like 3 of the books are from when I was getting tattooed. Maybe I'll get to finish the Keys to the Kingdom series, fingers crossed. I have a lot of footage in my phone, but I just don't have the time to go and piece it together. So maybe I will, like in November or December when I'm having my holidays, then you will suddenly see a huge influx of videos. But so far I'm just looking at food recipes on TikTok. Yep, I've tried like 3 of them so far. Looking at TikToks, I'm just like, there's so much effort and editing and time and planning that goes behind each short video that I don't know how they do it. I just don't. Like to do one, right, needs like a week. Are these people just not employed? I don't get it. How do they do it? Until next time, bye bye.